Hi everyone, this is Marilyn from the CDL Sustainability team. I hope everyone's been staying safe and well. Welcome to our 6th virtual SSA program. So the Singapore Sustainability Academy, or SSA for short, was opened in 2017 and is Singapore's first major 3P partnership space dedicated to advocacy, thought leadership, collaboration on climate action, and issues of sustainability. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're pushing out programs that are usually held at SSA onto a virtual platform to continue to engage the wider community. Sustainable habits, old and new for keeps, is a topic of focus today. CDL is very pleased to have longtime partners and founders of Secondsguru, Anuja Aggarwal and Lara Rath to share their insight on this subject. This workshop will focus on what sustainability looks like in this post-circuit breaker new normal, along with 6 useful and sustainable long-lasting lifestyle changes. So before we begin, please ensure that your headphones are connected and that your microphone is muted. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and jump into the conversation, or click on the chat box at the bottom of your screen to type in a question or comment. We encourage you to turn on your videos and contribute to this interactive session because the 3 most active participants stand a chance to win $30 vouchers from Bamboo Straw Girl. So please join in and have fun. Also, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go to view options at the top of your screen and select side-by-side mode so you can see Anuja and Lara along with their presentation slides. Please also go to the top right and click on gallery view so it changes to speaker view. This way you can also toggle the slider in between the PowerPoint slides and the speakers and drag it to make one or the other larger. Note that this session will last around an hour and will be recorded and accessible on our CDL sustainability page. Without further ado, let's all welcome Anuja and Lara.
Thank you, Marilyn. A very good afternoon, everyone. A big thanks to Esther and the entire CDL sustainability team and SSA for giving Anuja and me a chance to speak at the virtual SSA. I have to admit, Anuja and I have conducted multiple sessions and attended various talks and sessions at the SSA, but this is the first time we're doing it virtually. So really excited to be here today. Let me start by telling you about what Secondsguru is and what it does. Secondsguru is a social enterprise that promotes eco-awareness in Singapore. We go about ensuring our mission is achieved by operating in 3 core pillars. The first is via corporate workshops, where we create experiential learning journeys on the broad area of environmental sustainability, and we pick up topics that our clients are interested in, and we go and speak with them on those topics. The next way we do it is we also create talks and workshops for the community at large. For instance, 2019, the entire year was focused towards creation of events and workshops for youth in Singapore. We also do ground up initiatives where we go out in the community and conduct education sessions so that our mission and vision can really have a cascading impact. And finally, we operate what is called secondsguru.com, which is a green living guide, which is your way, your tool to lead a more green and sustainable lifestyle from the comfort of your home. I just wanted to set out how the conversation will flow today. First and foremost, please use the chat function. Do turn your videos on so I can see who's falling asleep, who's enjoying, and who's totally not enjoying, and I can change my narrative. The 3 most chatty people will be getting prizes, sponsored very generously by CDL. Yes, so here's the conversation flow. I'll first set up the macroeconomic narrative of what the pandemic has done and the climate change conversation, how they link up. Then we will talk about, can we as individuals, can you and I really make a difference? After that, the promised sustainable habits. Some of them that were always there. Some of them, because of the pandemic, have brought spotlight back on them, and all these habits that are for keeps. But every time we come up with a habit or an idea that we suggest you embrace or adopt, we will also tell you why each habit or each action matters. Because blindly following something that someone told you is the right way to go is never going to work and will not be sustainable. So look forward to hearing in and look forward to catching up. Just feel free to unmute yourself and talk and speak up if you have any points, or use the chat function generously. Okay. For me, honestly, following the pandemic has been like watching the climate crisis unfold, only with my finger on the fast forward button. There have been so many similarities between the greenhouse gases and the virus. Why so? Well, neither of them have any regard for borders. Any country, any continent, any city, both of them are present and both of them have caused havoc. The other similarity between the virus and the greenhouse gas emissions is that unfortunately they have a propensity to attach themselves and inflict themselves on the poor and the vulnerable sections of the society, leaving the rich and the elite aside. So I decided to take a leaf out of the famous Western classic, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and highlight the interactions between COVID-19 and climate, and highlight to you the fact that indeed the pandemic has some good positive elements, definitely quite a few bad elements, and then the very bad or so-called the ugly elements. And I'm going to speak, yes, there has been massive loss of life, massive health issues, but I'll focus with the climate conversation and I will talk on those lines. The very first, which is the good, the positive, is the fact that there has been a 17% drop in carbon dioxide emissions in 2020 as of May from 2019 levels. With that, we are back to 2006 levels as far as CO2 emissions are concerned. The interesting thing is the largest reason or the biggest contributor to this fall is not because of airline traffic going down. It is on account of lower road traffic, less vehicles on the road. The other positive that the pandemic has caused or has made happen is the fact that oil prices are at all-time low. Yes, granted, the oil crisis was already looming large, but definitely the pandemic exacerbated it and it took it to its current levels. Unfortunately, no one is really traveling or flying around, so that's an advantage that one is not really able to take advantage of, but why not? It has happened. What is the bad in the virus, the fact that we have been exposed to it and that we are also vulnerable? It is the fact that the miracle material, which was discovered after World War II, it was honestly finally going out of fashion. And then the pandemic struck. It's back in favor. Even pioneers like Starbucks, who rewarded customers for bringing in reusable cups, have paused their policy of allowing reusable cups for takeaway. Even they insist on taking one of the disposable cups because they want to contain and control the spread of the virus. So we are hoping that this is just a pause and that it goes away. But it is really a bad that the pandemic has inflicted upon us. And finally, the most disastrous or the ugliest impact is being the impact on the economy, wherein IMF forecasts almost a 3% contraction in global economic activity. And this is the worst level since the Great Depression times. The second is unemployment levels. ILO forecasts that about a half of the global working population, unfortunately, almost 1.6 billion of the most vulnerable people in the world will be without jobs once this pandemic is done with us. And naturally, when there's economic contraction and jobs are getting lost, the spending that is being committed to green budgets will also get contracted. On a not so negative note, on account of the unprecedented levels of devastation that this COVID-19 has brought upon us, governments all over the world have set aside almost $10 trillion as stimulus budget. What needs to be seen, however, is whether the stimulus budget will be spent in a way that economic and environmental priorities are married together. They should be, because a recent research by Oxford University states that when government spending is done in a concerted manner to contain greenhouse gas emissions, as well as economic improvement, economic stimulus, that has a longer lasting impact than pure economic stimulus. Moreover, a study by McKinsey says that for every $1 million spent on renewables, 5 more jobs are created than if that same money was spent on fossil fuels. So for both the reasons, whether it is in terms of economic growth or whether it is in terms of jobs creation, green spending seems to be a good way to go. In fact, it is already happening. Air France has recently been bailed out by the government of France. And one of the biggest conditions for the 7 billion euro bailout has been that Air France will review all the routes that it has in common with the TGV, the rail system in France. And wherever the distance that is traveled by TGV is less than 2.5 hours, Air France will review all its airline plans and limit them to where it is absolutely necessary. This is just an example. New Zealand, for instance, has committed to create about 11,000 jobs in the environmental space. So yes, budgets are getting set aside, but time will tell how this is going to unravel and unfold. But we are all hopeful that it is towards more green spending and the economy grows in a positive direction with allocation down to green spending. Now that we've set the macroeconomic setup, I would like to launch a poll, and can everyone see the poll?
Yep.
If you're on, okay, if you're on the iPad or an iPhone, it'll show up like this, poll in progress. Just click on it, and then you will get taken to the screen, which is the real poll screen. These are the questions in case someone can't see it. I'll wait for a few more of you to take the poll, please. Excellent. A lot of you think that you can make a difference. It's really heartening. Okay, just a few more seconds. Can I have everyone respond, please? All right. Okay, I'll end it here. Thank you so much for those of you who responded, and I'll just share the results. So we have it on the screen. All right, so all of you feel that you can make a difference and you can create a change if you do your part. Fantastic. Yes, indeed you can. Most of you feel that using water and energy efficiently, if we do it as a collective together, as a collective whole, will have the maximum impact, followed by reduced reliance on disposables, and then food and travel in that order. Interesting. Okay, I think this is a perfect point in time where I will like to introduce the research organization, which is Project Drawdown. Project Drawdown is nothing but a conglomerate of scholars, educators who have come together and put together solutions, which, if followed by individuals, corporates, and governments in a concerted manner, in an aggressive manner, over the next 30 years, will help us reach a point in time where greenhouse gas emissions will pause and start declining thereon. And that point is defined as drawdown in this graph in front of you. Why do we need to care? Because we don't have time. Why don't we have time? Because 30 years is not that long, not that much of a time. Now, the reality is that drawdown suggests close to 80 odd solutions. So Anuja and I decided to decode Project Drawdown. And what we've done is we've extracted elements from the entire 80 solutions, which can be applied to individuals, lifestyle changes, of course, collective action, and all of it, when worked together, can create an impact in the greenhouse gas emission narrative. So I know most of us here said energy and water would be the biggest impact on carbon greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, it is what we eat. It is eating better and eating healthy that has the maximum impact on our personal carbon footprint. Why does it matter? Well, simply put, the food print, as I like to call it, of a vegetarian diet is about half the footprint of a meat lover's diet. When I say meat lover's diet, it's a diet that's comprised primarily of red meat, all meals, every day of the week. So are we saying that you should stop eating and move all the way to the other end of the spectrum and become a vegan? No, absolutely not. I think the first approach to making a lifestyle change is to make a lifestyle change which is sustainable, not one that you will get fed up of and drop off the very next day or the very first opportunity you can. I will say, in fact, what I do, and I'll share that with you, I'm a flexitarian, which is a convenient way of saying I do eat meat, but I try and reduce meat and I try and eat a lot of plant in my personal meal choices. And if I were to assess myself on where I stand in this spectrum, I think by doing that, I have reduced my personal footprint by about 20%, 15 to 20%. Imagine if all of us collectively just make a small little step, swap the red meat with non-red meat. That is not very hard to do. Let's hope some of you at least see reason and logic and hopefully start trying it out. The other major impact that we as individuals can have in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions is by controlling our food waste. How much waste we food. Paradoxically, around 1 billion people in the world are going hungry, when almost a third of what is produced globally, that is about 1.3 billion tons, is wasted or lost. How much greenhouse gas emissions get produced in the entire process of waste and lost? It's about 10%. Can you even imagine just by wasting food? Now, wasting food is food which is perfectly edible, but it is just not looking pretty. It's not beautiful enough. So the first thing that we can do is start endorsing and supporting the purchase of ugly fruits and vegetables. Of course, need to buy only what we want to eat and take on our plate only what we can consume. And of course, if there's excess, donate to the needy. There is enough donation opportunities in Singapore. There's food bank, there's food from the heart. There are enough beneficiaries who do need to get support. So go for it. The other interesting narrative as far as food choice is concerned, which the pandemic has shifted the spotlight on due to the nature of the pandemic, is eating local. Now, interestingly, while Singapore ranks really high on Global Food Security Index, almost 90% of the food that is consumed in Singapore is imported from about 180 countries. Now, even before the pandemic struck, Singapore realized it. And as early as March, April 2019, the government of Singapore announced the 30 by 30 plan, wherein by 2030, we as a nation will aim to produce 30% of our nutritional needs in the country. So we reduce our reliance from external sources. What can we do? Well, we can start by buying local. You can find excellent quality eggs, very good quality fish, which is available from Barramundi, Asia, which is off Semakau landfill, and also in EcoArc, a new floating fish farm, which has been installed just about a year back. And of course, leafy greens from numerous vertical farms, rooftop farms, powered by LED lights, just agri-tech at its best. I'm happy to chat about it after we are done with the conversation today, if anyone is interested, and share more inputs. But definitely, that one sustainable habit which the pandemic has put the spotlight on is buying local. Let's buy local and let's support the mandate of 30 by 30. Another big impact, and yes, travel is even higher than energy usage. It is coming up, but travel is even higher than energy usage, is the fact that the entire nature of public transport, mass transport, because of its scale, it has a lower emission footprint. And no excuses if you're living in Singapore and not using, because Singapore is ranked #1 in the Urban Transportation Efficiency Index by McKinsey. I'm sure a lot of us use public transport. I certainly do. So that is great. But having said that, if there are a few of us who need to own a car or use a car, let's try and see if we can have an electric car or a hybrid car in our life. Of course, if you can bike or walk around, even better. I, for one, have discovered my feet after the crisis has struck and just needed to get out. So yes, in fact, I was just reading a research report which said that today there are about 1 million cars on the roads. And even if these cars are electric cars, even if these electric cars are powered by the conventional energy sources, about 50% emissions is reduced by using an electric car. So if you can make the choice. The Singapore is getting more and more electric car friendly. So definitely the way to go. And of course, one sustainable habit that the pandemic has again put a spotlight on and almost pushed us to a corner and forced upon us is telecommuting. Telecommuting by its very nature makes our living, our existence very eco-friendly. Because remember, 17% fall in carbon dioxide emissions was on account of lower vehicular traffic. And of course, if the travel bug just doesn't let go of you, you can opt for virtual tours. There are lots of amazing options in that space, or visit a museum from the comfort of your home. If nothing, get out on your feet and explore your backyard. It's as beautiful as it gets, as you can see in this picture, and many more. Thank you. With that, I'll hand over to Anuja.
Thank you, Lara. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me. Yes. Okay, great. So yeah, I will be taking forward the topic, with a few more sustainable habits that are important, that have always been important. But in many ways, the current situations of COVID have put a spotlight on them. But before I do that, I think maybe it's a good time to hear actually from you. We have all had, of course, had to make changes in our lives. And it would be interesting to see if we have some shared experiences in the things that we are seeing differently. So just give me a sec while I launch a poll. And if you can see it in your screen, what is it that you have learned in this circuit breaker? Are there any habits for better that you have imbibed, or some realizations that have sunk in? If you want to use the chat to leave your comments, that would be fine as well. But perhaps something over here will resonate with you. Personally, I have definitely been out and about my house a lot more than I ever was. A 1 hour walk seems like a stroll now. We have, I'm sure a lot of people are mentioning, about food delivery, definitely on the rise. I can see only one person who's having wine more nowadays, which is a surprise. Many, at least a few more of you using pajamas more often. So I'll give you guys five seconds more. Okay, so yeah, let me end this and share the results. So you can see our biggest shared experience. It's the food delivery, and how it is certainly creating much more disposables than we had expected it to. We'll talk more about this as we go on, but at this time, I think there is at least one theme I can see running through about how people are sharing in some ways, which is that we are appreciating more of what we do have in our lives. I mean, sure, we have been, stuck with a few things, and we have time to appreciate what we do have. But then the question is, are we starting to introspect whether we really need the things that we end up buying? It's a great habit to have, this kind of introspection. The next time you are at a point of purchase, you are at a point of buying something, ask yourselves, is it something I want, or is it something I need? Is it an essential or a non-essential? If I'm going for groceries, do I need to buy 2 kgs of rice or 10? How much toilet paper is too much toilet paper? We are going to get free new masks from the government, but if we have quite a few already at home, do we need to go and pick up that extra packet? These are frankly important questions to have, because no matter what you pick up, there are resources that go on it. I mean, for some of us, the wake-up calls are not in the grocery store, but in front of our cupboards, when we are suddenly wondering, do I need all the clothes I have? I mean, if we are mostly using a small subset of what we have. Jokes aside, actually, clothes is a great place to start this conversation, and I'll share why. Even when we are having normal times, we don't use everything we have, and we don't use it so regularly, right? In fact, there was a study by Greenpeace that measured it, and what they said was something very interesting. If we compared to 15 years ago, we use our clothes for just half the time. And this is despite the fact that we have 1.5 times the amount of clothes. So we are purchasing more, we are sharing them so much less. And that's a problem simply because even if I'm buying an eco-friendly piece of thing, it comes, with a price tag which is dollars that I pay and resources that the planet puts in. Whether it's eco-friendly or not, there is something that has gone into making anything you buy. I could be buying cotton clothes, which are COTS certified, which an artisan has been paid fairly for. And it's great that I'm looking at those details. But if I have 30 of them, there is a problem. There is a problem because and this is an estimate, almost 2,700 liters of water go into the making of one t-shirt, one cotton shirt. And that is the amount of water we are talking, all the way from the seed to the manufacturing it into a shirt. That's enough water for a person to drink for 2.5 years. That is the sort of resource price a cotton shirt carries. What is true for clothing is true for anything else. You could have shoes or bags or electronics. In the case of electronics, there is obviously the whole mining industry that is providing the resource. In the case of plastics, it's the petrochemical industry that's providing the resource. So in a nutshell, the way that we can really make impact is actually to not make a purchase at all when we don't need it. Luckily for us, and this is where COVID comes in, we have definitely gotten a crash course on finding substitutes to buy because we could not find things. Either things are out of stock or things are only online. And the next time you want to buy, I would really recommend this hierarchy of needs that you can see on your screen right now. Buying is the last resort and not the first. And from my personal experience, the last 2 months, it's been, to share, a crash course even for my husband, who is the hardest to convince sometimes. But I'll just share, and perhaps it will inspire you to realize that sometimes it's all a question of mindset. Exercise equipment, for instance, kettlebells, bicycles, yoga mats, all these were running out of stock in the last 2 months. And we tried decathlon, no luck. Then we tried carousel, which is the next step, right? You try and buy it secondhand, no luck. Ultimately, after a lot of thought, guess what? The gym that my husband goes to was actually renting it out. It is not an option that was available earlier or even thought of earlier, but hopefully we can start looking at resources as what they are. A 20 kg kettlebell coming all the way from China via ships, all that metal coming to Singapore. Everything that we have used in our daily lives has a resource cost. And if we can postpone the purchasing decision and look at other decisions first, that would be fabulous. There's a really amazing quote to this effect, that the most environmentally friendly product is the one you did not buy. And that really is the kernel of sustainability. So that's a habit I'd like you to leave with. In addition, the next habit I would like to focus on and talk about is, we've always spoken about it in all times, is the water and energy usage. It is an interesting concept in the Singapore context, because we don't actually feel it. We don't really feel that water is a scarce resource because we get it 24 hours, clean running water. And we don't realize how vulnerable we actually are. We are so vulnerable to disruptions that in 2015, we were ranked amongst the top 7 most stressed countries in terms of water. Not something we would think of because we haven't faced a disruption in a long time. This is not something that the government disputes, by the way. It actually informs the water policy we have in the country. So we do so much desalination. The reason we have new water where we put wastewater through such a stringent process that it becomes usable drinking water. We have 17 reservoirs and such an extensive system of canals and drains that 2/3 of Singapore is covered in this network. We don't see some of it because some of it is underground. And the fourth tap, as we call it, we import water from Malaysia. So we feel very secure because we have so many different avenues that we have created. We certainly have a strategy to fight the issue of water stress. But yeah, we can be happy that we are secure, but we cannot lose sight that water is precious. We cannot lose sight that tomorrow there are many threats that beyond COVID, such as climate change, such as the haze that we have, which can cause dry spells in Singapore, such as if there is pollution in River Johor beyond a certain point, even our imports will get impacted. So let's really be efficient with water. I mean, not to mention that the amount of energy that goes into making the water usable and then treating the water after use. What we can do for an average Singapore household, the answers are actually quite clear. And you can see because we are mostly using it in the shower, in the kitchen, in the laundry. And so that is pretty much how you can make your water use more efficient. Shorter showers, using mugs and tubs instead of running water, using low flow fixtures, using flushing systems as well that are low flow, reducing the shower time to under 5 minutes. These are, sound like slogans, sound so easy, and they are, and yet they are effective. So if I have to leave you with a habit, I mean, certainly water and also energy. This is definitely something we should focus on being efficient about. Again, energy, we don't realize in a first world setup as to it is a problem. Worldwide, if we see electricity production, it causes the heat trapping gases, are a quarter of them are caused by electricity production. Singapore is also fueled by fossil fuels, natural gas, which is a cleaner fossil fuel, but a fossil fuel nevertheless. And every year, 52,000 kilotons of greenhouse gases are emitted just for producing electricity in Singapore. Structurally, this is not something you and I can change in our everyday lives. And solar power is something that is still in the distant future for us. Even our ambition is only 4% by 2030. So in this scenario, again, the way we make an impact is by cutting our individual use. The top tips, again, I'm mentioning here because these are really daily habits. Maybe some of these we do already. Some of these we need to focus on again. And best practices. First off, air cooling. If you have a fan, that's fabulous. If you don't have a fan, then 25 degrees is the suggested temperature. Because every degree cooler that you go takes substantially more energy. Second is washing up. The washing machine actually uses a substantial amount of power when it's heating the water. So if you're going to use 30 to 40 degrees or a cold wash for your laundry, you really save energy. On top of that, if you dry the clothes in the sun and not in a dryer, again, you cut the amount of energy that your dryer uses. Third is lighting. LED lighting sounds like such a small change to make, but it makes a huge impact collectively. That's because they consume lesser energy, they release lesser heat, and they actually last longer. In fact, Project Drawdown that Lara mentioned earlier puts it amongst the top 80 solutions that we have to really reduce the amount of carbon dioxide we have in our atmosphere. And finally, unplug, right? When you leave appliances like TVs or computers always on, they pull a phantom load. It may not be a big load, it's true, but it's there and it's unnecessary, and you're paying for it. So if you just follow these 5 tips, these will help you reduce your electricity bill, which is a bonus, and reduce your own energy footprint. One thing I would now like to touch upon is the habit of carrying a zero waste toolkit, which is honestly just another way of saying that we need to reduce the amount of disposables that we create in our daily lives. I know it doesn't seem like we will be going out very soon, but phase 2 is coming. And soon enough, we will be out and about, and we can do something to not create waste every time we walk out. So how does that work? Now, disposables, of course, are anathema to sustainability for a very obvious reason. For starters, just the idea of using and throwing in single use doesn't gel for zero wasters. The other thing is disposables really add up. They really add up and really fast. So I was just reading the papers last week, and it highlighted a study by students at NUS who said through a survey, they made a guesstimate that more than 1.3 tons of waste was generated just by deliveries and takeaways during the circuit breaker period. That's 1.3 tons of additional rubbish just in 2 months. Now, you know, as a nation, that we use too much plastic is not a secret, right? We go to the grocery store, we pick up bags, we buy drinks in cups from Starbucks. Sometimes we can actually buy drinks in a plastic bag. Sometimes we buy drinks in a cup, and then there's a plastic carrier. So the ways we have invented to use plastic unnecessarily is actually immense. What happens to all of it? I think that's the point. What happens to all the plastic we create, all the disposables we create? Do they get recycled? Barely any, barely any. When it comes to plastics, Singapore's latest recycling rate was 4%. That is lower than even the global average. And if you look at the recycling rate for everything, for households, all totaled, it's 17%. That's 17%. So we are not doing a great job recycling it. What we are doing it is sending it to the incinerator, where, and the silver lining is it's not going to the ocean. The silver lining is at least it's going to the incinerator. It's getting burnt. And in the incinerator, they will also scrub the pollutants out from the air in the chimneys itself. So at least the air is not as polluted as you might expect. And finally, it goes to a landfill. Sounds like a beautiful story. We have visited Semakau a few times, and it is beautiful, but it is running out of space. So we can't afford disposables. What we do need to do is equip ourselves to, in some way, just stop it at source. And the zero waste toolkit is really how I believe we can stop it at source. Those of us who can make the effort should make the effort here. It's a simple list. It's something I always carry in my bag, and I'll just quickly share why. I have a feeling some of these elements you're already doing, for sure, if you're on this talk. The water bottle. Paying for bottled water in Singapore is very wasteful because we have access to it everywhere. If you carry your own, that's wonderful. Likewise, for a shopping bag, I've often heard, we do need plastic bags in Singapore to throw down the garbage chute, and that is true. But so far as our daily shopping goes, we can always carry a single sturdy bag with us at all times. It doesn't matter if it's a canvas tote. It doesn't matter if you already had a good, strong plastic bag from, I don't know, Takashimaya that can hold a lot of fluid. That is as good, and we don't need to buy a fresh one. A lunchbox is fabulous because it works in two ways. First off, of course, in takeaways, you can use your box where the vendor allows, which is great. You also are able to cut on your food waste when you're out and about, in case you're not able to finish your meal. Likewise for straws and cutlery. If you are expecting to eat out, these are good things to just carry as a backup with you, because many restaurants, establishments do not provide this. We know this, we wish they would provide it, but till that day comes, this is something we can carry. And finally, the mask and the sanitizer. This was not something that was in my bag 3 months ago. Now, of course, it has become a necessity. Unfortunately, the masks guidelines have always been changing. And so I don't want to be prescriptive when I talk to you on this, but maybe I can share what works for me, if it works for you. If I am going down for a walk, or if I'm going to, pick up bread, it is not a high risk scenario. In this case, as far as WHO guidelines go, they suggest, use a reusable mask. Make sure it has 3 layers. Make sure it is breathable. Make sure you touch it only from the loops, and make sure you wash it right after. These are simple guidelines, and if you feel comfortable with that, definitely a mask and a backup mask can be kept in your bag for all times. Likewise, a sanitizer. First off, I think it needs to be said that soap and water will do a better job of scrubbing your hands than sanitizer. But again, if you are out and about and this is really a zero waste toolkit you carry with you, then a sanitizer is something you need. You definitely need it in these times. If you can't avoid waste, at least you can minimize it. So I would suggest that if you are, if you don't have a stock of sanitizer at home right now and you need to buy, look up if you can buy a bigger bottle and then use it for refilling. I know at least one Singaporean brand that is Simply Good, which is selling these really big gallons of sanitizer. I mean, only if you are going to use that much sanitizer, it makes to get it, and then refill it, because you don't want to buy 20 small bottles. You're better off just buying a big one and refilling, which is, again, a zero waste lifestyle. So yeah, masks are here to stay. Sanitizers are here to stay. Unfortunately, physical distancing is also here to stay. What is, however, not here to stay, I would say, is disconnecting. I think social connecting is in fact on a rise. And I think I cannot highlight enough that, we use the word physical distancing and not social distancing, because really there are things. COVID-19 may have disrupted our lives completely, and we cannot replace face-to-face interactions. But to be sure, we are seeing people, get out of their comfort zones to reach out to others. And that is an amazing social connection. A part of it is really the simple part, right? Family and friends, Zoom, house party, online games. We are doing all sorts of things to stay in touch, from old college friends to distant family members and cousins we haven't spoken to, which is important for our mental well-being. And hopefully we are there for them. They do not feel isolated. But there is definitely another part to it, which is beyond our friends and family, which is with our community. Are we seeing this? Of course, yes. Not just in Singapore. I mean, this is not a Singapore story. We've seen in Italy, in the balconies of musicians playing. That is community. In Singapore, of course, we are seeing so much more volunteering. I know people who've gone to community centers and volunteered, whether it's for just donating masks or going to food bank, going to volunteers, people trying to support hawker centers, people raising money for migrant workers. And how much more are we hearing now about their living situations more than ever before? We are seeing people raising money for meals for frontline workers. We are seeing frontline workers who are putting their lives at risk out there. And interestingly, there's a technical term that I discovered that comes for this behavior, and it's called social capital. It's an interesting term in that it kind of tries to explain the extent of cooperation we see. Not all societies are completely cooperative, right? We have seen crazy panic buying in some places. We've seen looting in some places, but there are cities like ours where more or less things have been smooth. And that is social capital. At some level, obviously, there is a solidarity. There is a sense of shared identity, a sense of shared future. Maybe you're wondering, why on earth am I mentioning this in sustainable habits to keep? And you know what? Volunteering, donating, saying hello, empathizing with our society, that is actually a very core value. Without it, we cannot reach our goal of having a sustainable planet. COVID has shown us that there are many a times difficult decisions to be made and transitions to be made. Climate change is actually no different in what it demands out of us. We will have to make hard choices. We will have to see who is getting impacted more by climate change and empathize with them, find ways to help them first. We will have to see, for some people, it is going to be less convenient than for others. It is not the same choice for everybody. It's not the same convenience for everybody. And a social capital is a very, I think, and I and Lara both think, is an important part of a habit to inculcate. If we engage with our society, if we look out for each other, then there is hope, because we are all going to have to really pull our boat, which is planet Earth, into a more sustainable future. So I think with that really brings me to an end of the 6 sustainable habits that we mentioned today. I'm sure there are many more, but yeah, these are the ones we wanted to zero in on. And we are happy to discuss further now.
Thank you, Anuja. So we have a question from Tracy. Why does it always take a crisis for people to wake up?
Yeah, I think, Lara, do you want to take it, or I can, try. So
I think, Anuja, go ahead.
I think the crisis pushes us in a corner, right? It's like the superhero movies, really. You don't know how far you can. Sometimes we need to be pushed to push back, perhaps in some ways. So certainly, in the case of COVID, suddenly realizing that we could have done so much and so many resources are available to fight so many things in different ways. Maybe we should just thank this crisis. I mean, it feels ugly to say that because it has a huge human cost to it. But there it is. I mean, I don't know if Lara has a better way to answer this, but it's true.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think you said it right. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. No, absolutely. And the example that, in fact, I mentioned, which is telecommuting. I, for one, can give you an example of my husband who travels almost 3 weeks in a month. And finally, we recognize him. We know what he looks like because he's working from home. He's super efficient. Of course, he's not flying all over the world and killing the planet. So COVID pushed us to a corner, and telecommuting is not a choice anymore. It is something that we have to embrace. Some people hate it. Some people love to hate it. Some people love it. Whichever category you are in, it's here to stay. So, yeah.
Okay. We have another question actually from our team. Some people might not adopt sustainable practices because they feel everyday changes on an individual level have little effect on tackling climate change. What would you say to those people?
Anuja, you want to go?
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I missed a little bit, sorry.
Sorry. So some people might not necessarily adopt sustainable practices because they feel like their everyday individual actions won't make a huge change on, the whole climate change issue. So what would you say to those people?
Yeah, they are there. We all meet them. It's ideologies for all people cannot be the same. At some level, we find, we've been doing this for 5 years now, and we find preaching doesn't work. I can't tell you what will work I can't guarantee what will work. What doesn't work sometimes is telling people what they're doing wrong. What helps is if people can see what is being done right. And sometimes it takes them longer than you hope. But setting an example, showing them the way without stepping on their toes, sometimes works better. That's something we've realized a bit the hard way, but that's what I would say.
Right.
Yeah, I think if they see the joy in following a particular lifestyle, because it is the impact that it has, and that will come if they read up on the issue at hand. But eventually it has to give joy, because like I said earlier, if I tell someone who's primarily a meat eater to go vegan because it will reduce their carbon footprint by 45%, I have already lost the conversation. The plot is gone. Versus if I say, okay, going towards that side of the spectrum is a journey. Why don't you start by doing small changes? Start with Meatless Monday, for example, or Fabulous Fridays, for example. Take small baby steps and get to somewhere on the road, on the journey.
Right. That's definitely very useful to know. So we're coming to a close. Before we close the session, would you guys like to say anything to the audience?
Well, thank you so much for interacting with us. Yeah, thank you, Esther. I can see you. You're there. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Reina. Thanks the entire team. We had a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanking from my behalf as well. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Okay. We've been monitoring the 3 most active participants during the session. So congratulations to Sarah, Dominic, and Mango. Rena will reach out to sort out the Bamboo Straw Girl vouchers. And also, if you guys don't mind, we'd also like to take the time to get a quick screen grab of everybody on the session. So if you haven't already, can you please turn on your cameras and smile? Tracy from our team will count down to 3. Count down from 3, sorry.
Okay, smile, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining our
Thank you.
virtual SSA workshop. And thank you so much, Anuja and Lara, for providing your expertise on sustainable habits in a post-circuit breaker world. We hope everyone will start implementing some of these lifestyle changes into their own lives. And as mentioned before, the session will be recorded and posted on our CDL Sustainability YouTube page for your viewing. We have a few more exciting virtual SSA sessions to offer. The next being the Science of Wellbeing, Mindfulness and Positive Psychology, which is taking place next week on the 19th of June at 5 p.m. We'll be releasing more information on our next 2 sessions on our social media platforms, so please keep your eyes peeled. And then with that, we've come to the end of our workshop. Thank you everybody again, and stay safe.